We are going to be in Exodus chapter 20 tonight, verse 8. Exodus chapter 20, verse 8. If you don't know where Exodus is, it's the second book in your Bible right after Genesis. If you're in Leviticus, you've gone too far, and things are starting to get real weird. Ooh, I broke it. Exodus chapter 20, verse 8. All right, well, hey, last week, we started this series called 10. In 10, we're spending 4 weeks, or I guess 5, we're taking a gap week for Faith Academy, Fields of Faith. There's a lot of F's. There's Faith, Fields, Family, Friends. The Bible's just full of them. Okay, we're taking a gap week for Fields of Faith. And we're talking about the 10 Commandments, and we go, man, how are we going to take 4 weeks and study the 10 Commandments? Like, I'm not great at math, but that doesn't seem to work out. But what we're doing, if you were with us last week, is we're taking them kind of in clumps and saying, hey, here's really the heart that's behind some of the law that God gives us. It doesn't negate the law. It doesn't mean that the law doesn't matter. It helps us read the law better. It helps us understand the law better. And so last week we talked about the first 3 commands that God gives us that help us understand what our relationship should look like. And we saw that primarily, man, God wants all of you. That in a relationship with people, he wants all of you because he knows that everything else will try and steal from you and tear from you and exhaust you, but he wants all of you because he knows what's best for you, and he wants all of you, and he's a good God that gives all of himself to us. And this week's interesting because last week when we kind of zoomed out and looked at 3 of the commandments, we're just going to look at 1 this week. We're going to zoom in and look at command number 4, and that's because we're kind of in this weird transition where the first 3, they really tell us, man, here's how we relate to God, and here's what our relationship with God looks like. And then the next 6 really tell us, hey, here's what our relationship with people looks like. One of those is a little bit different. We'll talk about it in week 3. But this one really is reserved for, hey, this one's for you. And so he kind of really goes to bat for us and says, hey, I want all of you. I know what's best for you. And to prove it in command 4, I'm just going to give you a good gift. Because here's the deal. In 2019, I tell your parents this, I tell you this all the time, you are like the busiest generation we have ever seen. Like, you're the first group of high school students that need to also know how to run the calendar app in your phone. Like, I did not have to know how to, like, I did like 3 things. School, worked out, went to work, that was it. Like, there was not a lot to my schedule. But you're moving and going all the time, trying to fit pieces in all the time. And here's the deal, man, like, we know we're busy because this is what our small talk looks like. So here's what small talk used to look like. When you would see somebody that you knew, and so you couldn't just like act like you didn't know them and not have that like awkward glance and go. And so you had to say something. Right? This is what small talk used to look like. It would go, oh, hey, man, because you didn't remember their name. Hey, well, how are you doing? And you would go, things are good. And you would walk on, unless you were crazy, and you would be like, man, let me tell you about my life and how it's falling apart. And they're like, whoa, you misread how the conversation's trying to go, bro. And we would look at that, and we would go, hey, that's how it used to go. But here's how small talk looks like now, right? Like, if you were to walk into Numinous, and you're getting, like, your coffee order that has 17 different ingredients in it, because it's coffee, and it's good the way God made it. Like, you're going in there, and you run into somebody, and they go, oh, hey, how are you doing? And here's what you do. You don't go, oh, things are good. Your response is this. You go, oh, I'm just busy. I'm just busy. And just in case they're not going to believe your words, you start to, like, give motions to it. And the motion, you're like, oh, I'm just busy, right? Just like your hair just starts going in all 1,000,000 different places. You've got both hands up here, like, oh, man, I'm just busy. I'm just drowning. It's awful, right? Like that's your response. And the thing that's going on in you is you have this moment where the first thing that you want this person that by the way, you really don't even care about the conversation, the thing that you want them to know about you is how busy you are. You're over there, you're like, yeah, man, I'm saving orphans, I'm feeding widows, building houses for the homeless, I'm exhausted, I'm doing so many good things. It's ridiculous. You're just like, look at all of my accolades, look at my schedule, right? Like, you might even be the person that's like, man, I'm just busy. And then, like, just in case the hand motions didn't do it and the words didn't do it, You're like, oh man, like I've got like 17 workouts a day. That's how I'm staying so swole. I'm counseling elementary students who are blind. Like I'm doing this over here. Like you're telling them all the things that you're doing. You're like, man, listen to this schedule. Isn't it insane, the saint that I am? And so what happens is you begin to wear your busyness like a badge. I don't know if this is going to work this time. That was actually user error. Hey, we wear our busyness like a badge. It's this badge of honor. You're like, look at how great I am. My greatness measured by my busyness, by all the things that I'm doing. And you would never understand how busy I am because you're a sloth, right? Like that's how your conversations work. It's badge of honor, but then there's also like this next tier. There's like this silent voice behind you that it's badge of honor, but then it's also like cry for help. You're like, oh yeah, man, I'm just so busy. Please help. I'm drowning in AP homework. Someone burn all my assignments to the ground, right? Like that's what is beginning to happen there. You're like, yeah, I'm proud of it, but also I'm sad. And then there's this third moment that you see that person and you're really busy and you go, oh man, I'm proud of it. I'm really sad. Also, I really hope that you're not about to ask me to do something. So let me just lay my cards on the table and explain to you that I'm too busy for whatever it is that you might ask me to do or invite me to or be a part of. And you're just busy, man. It leaves you exhausted. I know that because almost every single conversation that I have with any of you at any given time, I'm not trying to stereotype, but sometimes they are true. Like, you're exhausted. You've got a million things going on. You've got a million practices to get to. You're taking way too many AP courses probably, and you've been planning for your college since you were 6 years old and you couldn't even spell college. You still spelled it like collage, and you thought that you were going somewhere for 4 years to organize photos on a wall. And in the midst of that busyness, here's what really happens is we're proud of it, and we really don't even know any other way to live, right? We're always just trying to fill our schedule, and if we get like 5 minutes of silence, we're so uncomfortable that we lean straight into our phone, or we go, I'm bored, as if every moment of your life was supposed to be an exciting roller coaster. I know, because I do the same thing too. Like, I wonder all the time, like, if I'm meeting someone for lunch, I'm like, was there a day that people just had to walk into the restaurant and hope the other person showed up? That must have been miserable. I'm not leaving my car until I get a text letting me know you're there, right? If I go get my oil changed, there was a day that they actually read the magazines on the table. That's why those magazines are 10 years old. That's the last time they were read. Everybody else has Twitter now. We're just like, oh yeah, this is much better. And so even when you're not busy, you are busy. Some of you are busy right now as I'm talking. It's awesome. You're right, just scrolling through. You can't miss it. Your thumbs are twitching. And we look at that and we go, man, we're so busy, and when we're not, we don't have full time. I know this because this is what happens when we go to camp every year. When we go to camp every year, the people that are totally okay with camp, the people that have a really good time are the people that go, wait a minute, you're going to tell me there's 4 hours of nothing scheduled? And that person looks at me and goes straight to their bag and grabs their hammock, and they're like, I'm stringing it up and I'm napping for 4 hours. Like you're just stoked that someone gave you 4 hours of uninterrupted time, and you're just like, nap time. Like you're like, I paid to be here, and you know what? A nap worth the payment. Like you get stoked. But then the rest of us that are still not necessarily comfortable with that, we go, 4 hours of uninterrupted time? What do you expect me to do? My schedule is minute to minute. Like, how do I live in this world? Because you're used to being busy. But in the midst of that busyness, here's the truth, man. We desperately want rest. We desperately want rest. Today was the first morning that I woke up, and it was 5:30. I woke up, and I was like, all right. Today I go for a run again. 16 days of no running since my last race, and it has been the most beautiful, listen, I love birthdays, I love holidays, but the last 16 days has been better than them all combined of just no movement. I haven't even drank water like I'm supposed to. It's like coffee all the time. I'm like, whatever, just let my body fall apart at the seams. It's been great. And what happens for me when I'm training and I'm running and I'm getting ready for a big race is I take about 6 months and I work out 6 out of 7 days a week. And I run, and the closer that I get to a race, the mileage builds up, the mileage gets bigger, and I start to get more and more tired. And what happens about 2 to 3 weeks from a race is I stop getting excited about the race, and I start getting excited for the off week. I'm like, oh man, the race will be fun. But that week where I don't run any, that's going to be a gift from the Lord. I just get stoked about it. Like, I'm like, man, I can't wait to sleep in a little bit. Like, sleep in, it's till like 7 o'clock. I can't wait to just get a little bit more rest. I can't wait to put so much like exhaustion on my body. Like, I'm excited. And we get really excited for that. We know that because in the world we have phrases like working for the weekend. How much do you have to hate your life that the thing you're going to do for the great majority of it is that you're just trying to make it to Saturday to watch 20-year-olds run into each other with helmets? Like, that's the goal. By the way, that's my goal too. I wake up Saturdays in the fall and I'm like, let's go. I can't wait, right? But you're just, oh man, yes, work, the thing that I do for the vast majority of my life. But when I get to that one day, I'm going to nap. And then I'm going to have children. I'm never going to nap again. We love our rest. We desperately want our rest as much as we wear our busyness like a badge. There's something in our souls that says that we desperately want rest. And here's why that's important, is that God knows that. God knows that you're exhausted. And listen to me very carefully. His plan in following Jesus is not for you to be exhausted. It's not. When God is working through the 10 commandments, he's giving them laws not just for the sake of like, yeah, here's 10 like pretty good rules. These are pretty nice. This should get you by in society. He looks back and he goes, the nation of Israel will be the example of God's people at this point in time. And so other nations will look at this and they will go, this is what the people of God look like. And so what God decides here that we're going to see in commandment number 4 is that the defining characteristic of the people of God is that they are well rested. That while all the other nations are exhausted, the people of God have energy. God is concerned with that. Look at this. This is what he says in Exodus 20, verse 8. Remember the Sabbath day. That's the day of rest, right? That's not just Sunday. It's not just church day. It literally means a day of rest. And to keep it holy means keep it set apart. Don't let anything intrude on it. Don't let anything interrupt it. He says, you are to labor 6 days and do all your work, but the 7th day is a Sabbath day to the Lord your God. You must not do any work. You, your son or daughter, your male or female servant, your livestock, or the resident alien who is within your city gates. For the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and everything in them in 6 days. And then he rested on the 7th day. The Lord rested on the 7th day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day, and he declared it holy. God wants to give you rest. He wants you to have rest. So let me be very clear. I do not want you to get confused. If you find yourself exhausted all the time and can never find rest, you are living disobedient to God and outside of his will. Isn't that a bummer? Because everyone in here was just like, oh, good. This is true. And here's the deal. The church is famous for getting caught up in a lot of other sins. But here's one that we should stand on in 2019, that it is sinful, meaning apart from God, to never find rest in him. Because here's what keeps us from finding rest. Here's what keeps us going and filling the calendar and doing as much as we can. And I know because it does it to me too. Like, listen very carefully. My wife is in this room. She can speak to this. She will speak to it in our small group. This is for my house as much as it is for your house. I know because we started this week and we sat down and we said, hey, we're going to make some time. We're going to spend little chunks of time together and we're going to make those important and we're going to connect. And guess what? It didn't freaking happen because life gets in the way. And because we are bad at protecting the Sabbath. So this is for me. What keeps you filling your calendar, what keeps you moving forward, is that success in what you can achieve and what you can accomplish in a future is more important than what God has for you. But the great irony of it is that when we do it God's way, we have a better future. Because let me also be very clear, it doesn't matter what college you go to or how far you go in the state championships, when you are mentally, physically, and spiritually ill, which we know that your generation is more than any other generation because statistics tell us that you have the highest rates of depression and anxiety. You want to know why? Because we're making you carry a workload that we never made any other generation carry. Because you can't find rest, and no one is going to make you. No one is going to make you. No one comes into my office. I love, and let me be very clear, I love my staff, I love my boss, but no one's going to come into my office and look out for my rest more than me. It's not. Everybody else in your life will put everything else of utmost importance. They will push you to the grind. They will push you to work hard. They will push you to fill your calendar. But God, he wants your rest. And what we have to decide is this, is if I have given my life to Jesus and he is the Lord of my life, is he the Lord of my calendar? Because if he's the Lord of my calendar, then I have to protect my rest. Because I am better when I do. I am healthier when I do. In college, I started doing something. I was really bad at school. So bad. My wife was pretty good at school. I was really bad. And what happened in my junior and senior year is I started working and I started having to learn things like time management, so I couldn't be lazy with my time. And I made a decision in of myself because Haley is a sleeper, man. Like she prioritizes it. She was not one of those kids that was like, I'm going to pull an all-nighter, I'm going to hit the grind, I'm going to hit the books. Like she was like, no, I'm going to study and then I'm going to sleep because it's necessary to my life. And I'm like, that is such an interesting thought. And so my junior and senior year, what I started doing is I would study, and when I started getting tired, I would stop studying and I would go to bed. Like I didn't care what test or what exam. If I'd get to about maybe 10:30, 11, like 12, if I was really pushing it, and I would just go, I'm exhausted. Time to go to bed. And then I would walk into my test the next day, and I would walk in feeling great, and the guy next to me would be like, I was reading chapters all night, and he would fail. Because exhausted people can't do well in school. They can't do well on the field. They can't do well on the track. They can't do well on the court. They can't do well in their social circumstances. Do you know when there's more fights in my house and in my life than anything else? When we start the sentence with, man, I'm just really tired. Because we get irritable and we get frustrated and annoyed. And it's the same thing in your house. I'm just tired. Why don't they just let me be? Your parents are like, I'm just exhausted. Why did we have them? God's plan for the example of the people that are going to be the image of who he is, they're going to show people who he is that they're well rested. And when we are not, we are poor image bearers of God, and we are living outside of his will. And then this thing happens throughout time as they see this, and they see this good gift, and they take it from good gift, and they make it ridiculous law. And so they start to put all these principles on it, and they go, man, okay, so if we have to protect the Sabbath and we can't do anything, then we can't do anything. Which basically meant like if your friend was dead in the ditch, you were just like, should have picked a different day. Like you couldn't help them out. You couldn't go do anything. You couldn't even help people. Like the law got in the way of loving people and doing things. And Jesus comes into play, and he is God in the flesh, and he starts to basically re-communicate law to help us understand it better, because we take God's good things and we break them. That's how the world works. And so Jesus comes in and he goes, hey, you're missing out. And this is actually what Jesus' message is on rest to people. We see this in Matthew chapter 11. You don't have to flip there, but it's in chapter 11, verse 28. And it says this, hey, come to me, all of you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take up my yoke and learn from me, because I am lowly and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Jesus takes rest and he says, hey, it's not just making sure you're getting your naps in. He says, it's in me that you're going to find real rest. He says, hey, you're tired and you're beat down and the world is winning. Come to me. The great attraction of Christ is that he's helping people find rest when they didn't have any. Rest is more than just taking some time and deep breaths and getting more sleep. It's spending time with the Lord, and you go, man, but Lane, for me, spending time with the Lord is exhausting. Here's why. Because you're trying to fit it in the midst of your busy calendar. You're not cutting stuff out and making room for God to enjoy him. You're making him another task, and guess what? You hate tasks. It's in Jesus where we find our rest. What would it be like if people came into our church for the first time, and they came into the loft for the first time, in the small talk that they had as they walked through the door. And they walked in and they said, well, hey, how are you doing? And they met you, and you've been here for a long time, and you've been walking with Jesus, and you're not ashamed of it. And you go in your school, you talk about Jesus. And they go, hey, how are you doing? And you go, man, I'm feeling really good. I'm just refreshed. I've got energy. Well rested. They would look at you like you were from another planet. If entire groups of teenagers like, yeah, like we're just well rested. We just feel good. They would go, there's something going on at that church. There's something going on with this group of people that are following Jesus. They look different because while everyone else is burnt out and tired and being driven to succeed, these people are rested. Not because they're getting better sleep, but because they're spending more time with Jesus and they're letting him fill them up. Have you ever wondered what sometimes when you leave worship moments, or you leave retreat moments, or you leave camp moments, and you can simultaneously be exhausted because of all the energy that you expended, but also feel like a new person walking out of it? It's because you found a different kind of rest that's found in Jesus. You spend time with him and you let him renew him, and you talk to him, and not with an agenda and not with the time limit. You just take that time to let him do something in your life that only he can do. And he knows so much that we will not do it, that he writes it as a command. He says, just in case you forget, because I know that you won't do it, because I know your heart. Your heart is to fill up your schedule, because you want to let your schedule define you. You want to let your accolades define you. You want to let your success define you. And as you're letting all that stuff define you, you're losing, and you're losing, and you're losing, and you're exhausted, and you're tired, and it's stealing. It's not giving, and I'll give. Come find rest in me. That's the gospel. The good news of Jesus Christ is that while everyone else is beat down and exhausted, those who give their lives to him find a different kind of rest. I've told this story before, but it sticks in my mind all the time because I never get moments like it. And right before we came to Marble Falls, for the first time in probably really our marriage, we took a real vacation and outside of our honeymoon. And we went up to the mountains with our brother and sister, and we went up there and we went backpacking, and her brother is just that family. They're schedulers, man. They're spreadsheet people. I love them. And Haley's brother has made the schedule for us, and on the schedule for the first day we're hiking in, and on the second day we're doing nothing. On it is just free day. But it's not like free day when you go to like a encampment or something. You're like, and then there's rock climbing, and then there's zip lines, and then there's archery, and then there's lighting things on fire, and you're like, there's just a million things to do. It's like, and there's a free day, and there will be a small pond. That's it. And I remember getting there, and even when we came in the first day, I was like, what are we gonna do tomorrow? What am I supposed to do? I remember asking Haley, what are we supposed to do all day? You can't sleep in. The sun's going to come up and shine through your tent. It's going to wake you up. And I remember, we go down, and her little brother is at the pond, and he's fishing. And I just remember, laying on some grass and being like, I guess I'll just lay here? I know, right up here. It's okay. It's just a phone talking. This is the future. It happens all the time. And I go, I guess I'll just, lay here? And I remember laying in grass that you see in paintings, and you're like, I've never seen a field so soft in my life. It was like that, and we're just laying there, and I'm just like, this is my day. And I'm talking with Haley, and I go back, and I string up my hammock, and I read for a little bit, and I fall asleep while reading, and then I wake up, and I'm like, I guess I'll continue reading. And I just spend some time reading, and just doing something that I love, and spend some time in the Word, and just doing different things, and spend some time just in and of myself, not walking through the mountains audibly, hey, God, it's me again. But just talking with God and letting him do something. And it felt great. I've never in my life just had a day of rest like that. And I looked back on that, and it was just when I needed, one, to be able to come and do what God was going to do in this ministry and what he has done, which if you've been here a while, look around. God has done some things. And it gave me rest in ways that a little bit of sleep could never do. Just being in his creation, being with him, letting him speak, enjoying his presence, enjoying his people. And I was rested. See, here's the deal. You may never just find a full day front to back that reaches your definition of rest. But here's the deal. If you don't begin to find some patterns of rest in your life, in our house, a lot of times we just try to take an evening. If we can get one evening a week, man, we're stoked. If I can come home from work like an hour early, and we'll just take an evening. Sometimes we get lucky. Sometimes in the fall, we say, hey, man, we're going to take a Saturday. And here's the deal. That Saturday that might be a rest day, we still might do some chores. Like we might pick up because it doesn't necessarily exhaust us, but we go, hey, we're not going to go see anybody. We're not going to go do anything. We're not going to make any plans. Like we're just going to sit at home. We're going to wake up. We're going to watch some football. The Aggies aren't playing this week. It's going to be a very restful weekend for us. Thank goodness. And we just take some time and we just spend some time with each other and enjoy one another and talk about sometimes where we're at in life and things like that. And we just find rest. And it makes us better. But here's the deal. No one's going to find it for you. You've got to begin to cut some things out of your life probably. You've got to begin to organize. You've got to begin to become actually good at time management. Open up your phone and look at how many hours you spend on it and in apps. You could solve world hunger with the amount of time you spend on your apps. I'll be right there with you. I'd be like, no, really, I think we figured it out. This is good. But if you fill in your rest time with being drained by what's going on there, like I have never started a Netflix binge and woken up on the other end of it and gone, I feel great. I have always woken up and gone like, did I just do push-ups? Like my body is like all of a sudden more sore than it is when I didn't have started. I'm weak. Find real rest. Make some time for it. Decide what's important because I promise you, it does not matter. Listen to me. Focus on this right here because almost no one else will tell you this. It does not matter what school you go to, what championships you win, what place you graduate. None of that matters if you are mentally, physically, and spiritually exhausted and ill. It will not matter. If you graduate number one, but heavily depressed with anxiety out the roof, you have wasted 4 years of high school. Because that is not what God wants for you. That is what the world wants for you. Will we find rest? I'm going to pray for us so you can